Hi guys, it's Commodore Sam coming to you again from LA, Lower Alabama. It's been a little while since my last video. Had a lot going on, a lot of work stuff, a lot of life stuff, that kind of thing. But I'm back at it, and I brought some friends with me. So we just got back from the Vintage Computer Festival in Chicago, VCF Midwest. And in preparing for that, a couple of friends and I got a table together and had a display and sold some of our wares, etc. But we, in prepping for that, decided that we wanted to concentrate on a few things. We all three liked programming for the Commodore and the OtterX, Commander X16, just 6502 in general. So with 6502, you can use a lot of different languages. One that we were enthusiastic about is a new language called Prog8. I call it new, fairly new. It's a cross-compiling language, and so we're going to get into how to install that on your PC, how to compile the program. Going to look at a few programs written in it so you can kind of see get a feel for what it can do. But that's the gist of this video. It's going to be a series, and it's going to be a series where this is, where we'll actually get deeper into the language going forward. Maybe do a few projects here and there. It'll be the three of us generally doing this. Us being the three founding members of Prog8 user group, and so I'm also starting another channel, so there'll be details about the other channel in the description below, where most of these Prog8 videos are going to go. But I wanted to, I may also put them on my channel for a little while as well. But in addition to that, I've got some other videos in the hopper that I've promised you that I'm going to get out there. Some on the Mega 65, one on the OtterX, C64OS, and some oddball hardware ideas. So anyway, we're going to jump into those, and hopefully I'm going to be able to produce more videos now that everything has calmed down a little bit. What you're about to see is a video recorded on Teams of the Prog8 user group, and we started a training session for Prog8, a fairly new language for 6502 computers, Commodore, Commander X16, OtterX, etc. Pretty much anything that runs on 6502. Anyway, leading the class today, or this training, is Andrew Gillum from Wisconsin. Also attending is the other two founding members of the Prog8 user group, and that's Brett Estrade and me, Sam Cook. I hope you enjoy this introduction to the language and how to get a compiler up and running with it.
Today we're talking a little bit about what is Prog8, and Prog8, I won't read this whole thing to you, but at a high level, it's a compiled programming language for the 6502. It's looking for convenience over the pure assembly code, and it's still, low level and fast. So here is sort of what processors it targets and different platforms like Commander X16, Commodore 64, Commodore 128, etc. And so what I was going to talk about or show was quickly some things that use Prog8 or written in Prog8, and then we were going to show how to install a Prog8 toolchain essentially on a vanilla Windows machine. So at a high level, here's Prog8. Here's some screenshots of some things written in Prog8, and it talks a little bit about features, but links will be available and you can check this out at your leisure. But let me show just a few things that are running using Prog8. So I'm going to just show this on Vice rather than try to capture some hardware, just because it's easier. But this is a demo just here called Balloon or Balloon Flight. It's just using a sprite, a little bit of graphics. I'll just show the next. These are a series of examples that comes with it, and we can look at the code later. But This is just a quick overview. Here, this one is changing the mapping, mapping in the character realm, copying it, modifying it, so everything is italics. And so it's just an example of how to quickly make a custom character set. Here's a 3D cube calculator. It's calculating like the vertices, and it's using graphics, so they're quite flickery. It's doing about 12 frames per second there. So another example doing the same thing, but with using sprites instead. So file selector example here is just a text user interface showing like, okay, here's a list of files or items of whatever kind, but in this case it's files. And you basically just, hit enter on one and it says, hey, you selected sprites. And so there's just an example that can be used to program the file manager or whatever. We got a plasma example, which is using a custom character set. So that was what that delay was, is copying the ROM or creating the custom character set. Just another graphics one here using the Commodore 64 raster interrupt to do some cool bars effects. And then just sprites example. And just showing some sprites, but in this case, the border is open, and this is being done on IRQ, so we can actually, still type, showing how to kind of do it in the background. Starfield, I don't know why these things always are cool, but I just like kind of looking at these for a while. It's like the old Star Trek warp screen. We have a Tetris game. This is written in Prog8, of course, but it's also available on the X16. So the Commodore X16 can run a similar version to this. Play a quick game. We've got a Turtle graphics demo where we're basically just doing some line drawings, like turning and drawing. We have some things on C64OS on the C64 that I will show real quick. I made a game called Solitaire, and we just will boot up C64OS here. And while it's booting, I'll just mention that the C64 is supported natively by Prog8, but then the C64OS is a custom target that obviously has to work a lot differently because it's working with a full operating system, an API, and a bunch of extra things, not the whole machine. So it's slightly more of an involved scenario, but we'll just show a couple of basic things here. So the C64OS is written in 6502 assembler, and it comes with a Hello World program, and I made an equivalent in Prog8, which really just comes up and says Hello World, but it's doing the bare minimum of being in an application under C64OS. It doesn't crash it. No, it has a menu here with normal menu behavior and able to exit, and that's kind of the very minimum of a C64OS application. Here's an early attempt at making a 10 print type thing with a little debugging that goes across the top. But it basically had to do a custom character set because it had to switch back to the Petsky character set really, or characters for these, because C64OS uses its own character set. So it doesn't have these particular graphics needed for 10 print. So this was a little bit more complicated than I thought it would be. But anyway, this is just an example there of something written in Prog8. And then I wrote this game entirely in Prog8 with possibly a little bit of assembler, but it's pretty much 99% Prog8. And it's really just a solitaire game that you can pick up the cards, drag them, various maneuvers, normal solitaire. One thing that people have commented is like, oh, all the C64 games, they never let you drag the cards because they were too slow. Well, this is in text mode, but also it's still, doing a fair amount of work moving these cards around or moving a, stack of them. So it's kind of cool that it was able to do that in a high level language like Prog8. So that's pretty much all the demo in C64 or C64OS. And then I had one program I was going to show that there's a few written for Commodore X16, but I was going to show one in particular just because it is pretty cool Galaga game. And I'll just start it up manually here so I can get this position on the screen. What we have is we'll CD into X16 here. And I'll just say boot, which will run the autoboot.x16. And so this game, we could look at the source, but it's written, Prog8 might have a little bit of assembler for some critical section stuff as well. But it's, like a fully playable version here. And just shows that you can do a lot of high performance things, especially on the Commodore X16, of course, which is 8 megahertz and has the Vera, but you can do a lot of interesting things in Prog8 as well. So that was sort of my demo of what you can do with Prog8, and now we're going to go to how to get Prog8 working on your system. And what we have here is just a virtual machine that is vanilla Windows machine, doesn't really have anything installed. I do have the installers for these various things that we'll need pre-downloaded. We'll put the links for everything available, but I'll also search for some of these and just show you what you need to get. So if we say JetBrains is one of the first things, is this tool called IDEA or IntelliJ IDEA Community Edition. So we go to JetBrains, and then we're going to go to Developer Tools, and we're going to go to IntelliJ IDEA. And if we go to this download link, the first one is Ultimate, which is the paid version. But if we scroll down here, there's Community Edition. And then this is what you're going to want to download. It's free, and it's recommended for using with Prog8. And then we'll go ahead and install that now. So it's this executable here. It's the latest version as of today. And we'll just go through the install process. We might need to jump cut this if it takes a little while. But it's the first step just because some of the other things depend a little bit on having the editor part already installed. Now, I'd recommend all the defaults, but there are a couple things that are convenient if you haven't used this before. One is if you add the bin folder to the path from the command line, you can say like IDEA space in a file, and it'll launch that file in IDEA or IntelliJ IDEA. But the other one is open file as project or open folder as project, where you can right click on a folder and it'll just open it automatically. I usually turn those on. They're not really needed, but I recommend it. So then we can do this install. So while this installs, we can look for the next thing that we need, which is normally Git. IntelliJ has some Git capability built in, but also we want to have our own, normal Git installed. So if we say Git for Windows, you can just go to the download, and then this first download right here is, click here to download. This is the Git that we want. This file right here, which we're going to install after this completes.
You said this will integrate directly with IntelliJ?
Yes. Git has the ability to launch it has some built-in default kind of configuration external editors that it can use, like Notepad, Notepad++. But you can also do custom executable or custom editor, and you just give it the binary to launch. And when IntelliJ is launched in that way, it comes up in, I think they call it like IDEA Lite, which is just an editor. And so we'll show you here when we get to the Git part, the installing part, but it essentially lets you just use the editor part without kind of like all the extra project management, and build systems, SDK, whatever. It's more or less just like the editor portion of the IDE. Well, we're going to do this install, and we don't really need to launch it. We'll just have it installed, but I do want to grab the name of the executable, or the path to it. So I'm going to just search for it here. I'm going to pin it to the taskbar because that's convenient. And then I'm going to say open file location, which this is a shortcut. And so we want the actual file. So we're going to just click on that and say properties. Except I got the folder here. Hold on. Properties here on this. And then this is the executable name. So we're going to just grab that with Control-C and put it on the clipboard. And now I don't really need that for the moment. We'll go to Git. This is the full Git installer. There's also like portable versions and whatnot, which those don't automatically add themselves to the path and a few other things. So we're just doing the normal like installer version, which is the first one in the downloads. There's a few options that you could change, like check for updates and different things, but you can also add a bash profile to Windows Terminal. I find that I like bash, but I don't kind of like mixing Windows and bash. Either I use the Windows subsystem for Linux or a Linux machine, but when you use this git bash, like make files that check for Windows, think it's running on Windows, but then it's actually running in bash. And so it gets kind of complicated. So I just select these defaults. You can let it create a start menu. Now here's where it says choosing the default editor. So Vim is, it's default selection here, but you have Notepad, Visual Studio Code, etc. Notepad. What we're going to do is select other. And then it's asking me for the location. Well, I'm going to just paste this in rather than go find it. So I found it earlier by, again, right-clicking on the IntelliJ and getting a properties, finding it right there. So there it is. I'm going to hit test, and this is where it'll launch, and you'll see the lightweight kind of editor version.
So I have a question. I may have missed it, but did you install a Java runtime yet?
Not yet.
Okay.
So that could be done first because it kind of standalone, but it's all this editor IDE first, then Git, and then after this will be Java.
Okay.
So, agree to the license agreement for the free version. Continue, you can share data or not. This is what it'll do on the first launch of IntelliJ. So now it's launching from, Git is launching this to do a commit message effectively. It says, hey, it was loaded in light edit. Do you want to load it in project mode? Well, in this case, I'm going to just stay in light edit. And then it says, please modify this, save it, and then exit. So I will just say, this is a test commit message. And then we will hit Control-S to save this. That little blue icon went away. I'll hit X to exit out of here. And then in a second, Git should tell me, okay, success. So now Git's happy with that as an external editor for commit messages, which really is only going to be needed if you call Git directly, like when you're using IntelliJ inside of it to commit, it handles it. But this was just if you ran Git from the command line or whatever outside of IntelliJ, really. We'll show you IntelliJ when we get there. So we'll say next. Here's where you have the option of you can override the default branch name and say pick main. A lot of people are using say main nowadays as instead of the master branch, but here the default is let Git decide. Whether you want to use Git only from the bash shell, which they provide, which won't put it in your path, and whether you want to add some optional Unix tools. Again, the default in the middle here is it'll add it to the path, but it won't inject some extra commands like find, which will mess with your Windows commands. So again, we're just picking the default. The bundled open SSH is fine. And then using the native Windows secure channel library as well is fine. Here's where it might get complicated if you're involved with like a bunch of Linux machines, is how to check out. So it checks that out in Windows style, but it commits in Unix style line endings. And, you can do it as is, or you can, it'll convert back and forth. So checkout as is would take it from the repo, but anytime you make a change, it'll add Unix line ending. This whole line ending things can get complicated. It's better just to pick this default of Windows style on checkout and committing Unix style and say next. I mean, that's the default. Here, we're not really going to use git bash, so the default of min-tty is fine. That's a better little terminal emulator anyway, so we'll just say next. Fast forward or merge is good for the git pull behavior, and then it'll enable this. Default is to have this Git credential manager. So if you log in or sign into GitHub or something, you would then be able to store your password or your API key, etc., in this credential manager. That's a default. And just so everybody knows, this is kind of like the minimum viable product. Like, here's how to install it and get it working. There's lots of other ways. You can put it in different directories, organize it differently, use a different editor, etc. But this will get you up and running. So if you don't have an opinion about any of these tools, then here's a tool chain that'll get you going. You want to use Git if you're pulling projects down from GitHub. Yeah. Like downloading it as a zip file and then unzipping and moving it around is just clunky versus cloning the repo. And I'll show you with IntelliJ when I pull down like the Hello World repo that it's just easier. So okay. I'm not 100% sure that this git install is truly needed to use IntelliJ, but if you want to use a command line or some other things that use git, it's just good to have it in hand. And there might be a couple other tools that it comes with that I use that I forget that are part of Git. So one thing we can do also is after we install these things is we can validate that they worked. So I will pin this to the taskbar, and then I can launch a command shell. You don't really need to do this, but this is just a good way to validate that your things were done. So git -- version at this point should run git and tell you like its version, and that's the 2.51.0.2 that we installed. So you know that it's in the path correctly, and that worked out. So that is installed. So then you want to use you need a Java JVM. So the one I use and that I'm going to be installing here is called Eclipse to Murin. And it's part of this Adoptium program. There's like a long history of OpenJDK and adopt OpenJDK and different branches and forks. But so here's Windows. You'll end up getting JDK 25 and an installer for that. So that's what I have right here is OpenJDK 25U. Now here you have the option of just installing it for yourself or for everyone. I normally just do everyone. Also, some things, if you're a Java person, you might need this Java home variable set. For this case, we don't. We can just use these defaults. So you may want to select something differently there, but the defaults are what we need for this operation. And we hit install. It's going to ask us to confirm we want to allow it to do that. And we'll say yes. Okay, so that's installed. And now if we want to validate that that was installed, we'll just run the command prompt again, and we'll say java-version. And, you know, open JDK 25. So that's good. Next, the program or the Prog8 compiler needs to use an assembler, and it's 64TAS is the assembler. So it's on SourceForge, and you can just click right here and it'll download. And you know, as the pop-up says, it's going to download 1.60.3243.zip. And that's what I have right here. Now, here's where it might be slightly complicated. We got to create some directories to put that in. My recommendation is just to make a bin directory off of your home and put various utilities in there. Like in this case, 64TAS would be the one, and then we'll add a batch file for the Prog8 compiler. And so the easy way to do that is when you get here in File Explorer, it's kind of like, well, where's, you know, my home directory? I've got downloads and pictures and documents, and these are all things in like your home directory, but they don't provide you really your home directory, right? But if you click right up here on this before home, this little drop down gives you all these kind of common paths, but then right there, this user ID that I'm logged into is called P8 user. So that'll be your home directory. You know, you might say CommodoreSam or Brett or something, or whoever you are, but you click that and then that'll get you to your home directory. So once we're here, we want to just create a new folder called bin. So bin, and I'll go into that folder, and then I will open up this zip file for 64TAS. I'll go inside there further. Right here, this says 64TAS application, you know, 273K in this case. All we really have to do is just drag that over here, and it'll say copy to bin, and we'll drop it. So now 64TAS is in this bin directory in your home. And there's some documentation in here, and you know, you might want to throw the manual over there, or however you want to organize it, but that is all you really need is this executable. There are some examples and syntax files and other things for 64TAS if you want to get into the assembler portion, but for using the Prog8 compiler, you don't need those. So that part is almost done, but we want to add this to the path. So we'll just go back, and right here we can right click and we'll say copy as path. So we're right clicking on bin, copy as path, go to the start menu, and if you start typing the word environment, you're going to get two options, and they might change a little later, but right now the second one is add environment variables to your account. We're going to click that one, and it's bringing up environment variables specific to me. I'm going to click on path, I'm going to click edit, and then I'm going to click new, and then I'm going to paste this in here. And you can see there's this user profile, percent user profile, percent. That's really a variable for your home directory. We could change out this C users P8 user for that, but that's not really necessary, but it is maybe, you know, cleaner. But that'll put this in the path. So we'll hit OK, make sure you hit that OK, and then make sure you hit this OK, and it will actually make that change. So now if we bring up our terminal again, we can say 64TAS -version. Actually, I think it's -- version on this one. There you go. So we've got that in the path. And then we want to be able to use make files. So the next thing that we're interested in is GNU make, and that's GNU make for Windows. So if we say, you know, GNU make Windows, you scroll down here, there's GNU win32.sourceforge.net and make for Windows. So if we go in there, yeah, this thing is old, but what you're going to want is this first line, which is complete package except sources, and you're going to click on this setup, and that's going to push you the installer. And
Make
so
hasn't changed that much over the years.
No, and for simple make files, it's going to be good. And so here's make 3.81, which is what I downloaded. Yes, we want to allow this to make changes. As long as you got it from SourceForge, you should be good. Accept the GPL. Like here's the default directory, which we're going to need later for adding to the path. Full install. It's okay if it creates. You can also say don't create start menus. It's up to you. Same thing here for the documentation. If you don't want the documentation in the start menu, I just accept all these defaults for now. We'll hit finish. And it does not add itself to the path at this point. So we need to do that. So the easiest way I find here is we have this window. We'll just go to this PC. We'll go into the C drive, program files, X86. Here's GNU Win32. And then this bin directory, I guess we can go in there, but here's where make exe is. So we'll go back and you want to do the same thing we did earlier, and we right click that. We copy as path. Then we're going to go to the start menu, type environment again. Notice this time that environment for my account is first in the list because that's what I chose. So just keep an eye on that because we're trying to add them always to the ours. And even though the system ones are right here, it's just that's the best one to pick. So we're going to hit edit and we're going to hit new. We'll add this one. Going to hit OK and then OK. And we'll bring up our terminal. And we know this is a GNU utility, so it uses the double dashes. And so their make is now in the path and is happy. Now the Prog8 compiler itself is actually a jar file. And so if we go to we'll say Prog8 GitHub, and that should bring us to Ermin/Prog8 on GitHub is the project we want. And you might want to bookmark that while you're here. And then we go under releases. And we want the latest beta, which maybe by the time you're getting this, 12.0 will be out, or the over 12.1, etc. Whatever the latest version is, you should be fine with. And this particular version has some new pointer and structure features, so we really don't want to go back to the latest stable, which is an 11. So we're going to just use this 12.0 beta. So here's the jar file for the compiler. You're going to just click on this and download this, and we'll install it. While we're here, we want to grab the syntax file for IntelliJ to recognize and do syntax highlighting for Prog8. So back here in the main repository, we're going to go down to syntax files. And then in here, there's JetBrains IDEs, which is what we're looking for. There's a README that tells you that it's in the app data roaming JetBrains, and this is PyCharm as an example. We're using IntelliJ, and then a directory called file types. Okay, so this file types is the important piece of information because that directory doesn't exist. We'll have to create it. And so we're going to take this file, you just click on it, and then over here, you can click download raw file, and then you'll get this prog8.xml file in your downloads folder. So once we have that, we're ready to install the compiler. There's one other thing we need that isn't currently on the web. I need to put it somewhere, but it's generated when you build the compiler, and it's this Prog8C batch file. We'll either put a gist up or I'll add it to a repo and we'll put it in the links in the description. But this basically is needed to run the compiler via command line of Prog8C instead of Java space -jar space and this long file name. But I'll just show you that here. So we're going to go back to our home directory, and there's two things. The way this batch file works is it expects it to be in the bin directory, and it expects this jar file to be in the lib directory. So in this case, we're going to just say new folder, and we're going to say lib. And then we're going to click on this Prog8 here, and we really want to copy it in this case because I don't want it to be out of there. I'm going to just make a copy, and we can clean up the downloads directory later. But I'm going to just copy this in here. So now in lib, we're now going to just have the copy the compiler. And then in bin, I want to put a copy of the batch file here. So you drag that and then you hold control and it'll switch to saying the word copy instead of move, and you let go. So now we have Prog8C in the bin directory. If we run the terminal again, I like to validate each step that it's working correctly. We can say Prog8C-version, and it should tell us it's 12.0 beta 4, which is what we just downloaded and what we were expecting. And so now we have the compiler installed and the Java, Git, make, etc. But because we're doing, Commodore 64 and maybe a little Commander X16 development, we probably want an emulator for those platforms. And so that's where, for C64, Vice comes in. So we go back in here and we'll just say Vice C64. We'll get some movie references, but Vice, the versatile Commodore emulator. You'll go here, download, and the Windows, you don't want this latest ad hoc. You want the 3.9 GTK3, or if it's 4.0 or whatever version is the latest, but not this ad hoc or nightly build version, just the official release and then the GTK3 version.
I have a question.
Yes.
So a while back, I got in that Forever 64 thing. Is that also Vice, or is that a different?
Yes, it uses a version of Vice, and I think you could use that, but it's more involved to launch it and whatnot with this.
Yeah, because it's like a whole wrapper around it.
Right, and I mean it kind of packages it, and it's a different version, and this is newer, and so personally I would recommend is just install this and use C64 Forever or Amiga Forever separately as their own thing.
Okay.
Just because they provide updates for that and they kind of integrate it with things.
Yeah.
But so Vice 3.9 at the moment, and then GTK 3, and this is just, it's not an installer, it's just like a pre-compiled, sort of a portable application. I'm going to just dump it in my home directory. Not necessarily the best organization, but it's more straightforward for this particular thing. You might make an emulator directory or an applications directory or something. It's also fine. But basically, we're just opening this zip file and then dragging that file over to your home directory, which is what I was doing while I was talking. So now we have, in our home directory where we put that bin and that lib, we now have this GTK3 Vice 3.9. We need to go in there because we want to grab this path also so that we can launch Vice without specifying the full path. So again, right click on the bin and say copy as path. We'll go down here to the start menu again, say environment. I'll click my environment, click on path, hit edit, say new. I'm going to paste in that thing that I copied. I'll say okay. I'll say okay again, and now it should be in the path. So we'll launch the command prompt. And if you want to see what we should run here, if we go into that bin directory, there's a bunch of stuff, but there's like C1541, which is a tool used to mess with D64s and whatnot. But down at the bottom is the actual emulator. So the one we're interested in here is going to be X64SC. So to confirm it's in the path, we can just say X64SC-help, and it'll dump out a ton of help, or it'll tell me some errors, whatever. But here's the help, and it has all kinds of options, which we don't care about. We just care here that it launched. And so it ran, it's in the path correctly. You know, that's good. Then for Commander X16, it's a similar kind of thing. What we want to do there is we can say like X16 emulator. It should get us to, yeah, so X16 community / X16 - emulator on GitHub. You know, might be good to bookmark this link. Go over here to releases. As of right now, the current release is 48 or R48. It's been this way for a while, probably still will be for a while. You want this X16 EMU _ Win64-R48.zip. You're probably unlikely to have Win32, but so Win64-R48. Download that zip file, and we're going to do something similar with what we did for Vice. And so we'll be right-clicking on Explorer here. We can use recently used, and that's just my home directory. So I just clicked on that, and then it brought up my home directory. And so over here on the right in my downloads, I have X16 EMU R48.zip. If we go in there and look, we can see that it's not in a subdirectory like Vice was. It's actually just all inside the directly in there. So what we want to do is just extract this, and notice I made this a little wider, so there's an extract all that shows up. So click on the zip, hit extract all. It's going to offer to extract it into the downloads directory and show the files. We don't really need the files to show. I'll just uncheck that and hit extract. So now it's extracted this directory, and we're going to do the same thing as move it into our home directory so that it's in there similar to Vice. But again, if we look inside, there's no subdirectory. So the executable, which is right here at the bottom, is directly in here. So we're going to just copy this directory, right click it, copy as path, and we're going to add that to the path as well. Okay, now we've made our path nice and long. Now we can bring up the terminal again, and X16 EMU -version, I believe. Yep. So it's in the path, and it says, you know, release 48, which is what we're expecting. So now we've installed X16 emulator as well. So that's pretty much all the tools that we want. There's a couple plugins inside of IntelliJ that, or at least one plugin and then some updates. So I'll show you that. But that's the installing these tools. If we look through here, we've installed pretty much all of the tools. The only thing we haven't touched is this XML file, which is the syntax highlighting, and only because we need to get the directory to put it in. And it's easiest to do that from within IntelliJ. So I added that to the taskbar earlier, but you can just hit start, and then you can just type IDEA, and it'll find IntelliJ IDEA Community Edition, not that installer, which also pops up. And so we launch that. And once we're here, it pops up and it gives you sort of a starting point, I guess we could call it, where you can create a new project, open an existing project, clone a repository, or you can actually do a few other items here, deal with some plugins. The options menu with settings is available. But what we'll do is click on the options menu and then go to settings, because we want to add a plugin that supports make files. So we go to this plugins directory or menu, and then up here in the search, I'm going to just type makefile. And it's going to bring up the makefile language. And once I click on install on that, it will switch over here to say it's been installed. And that's pretty much all we needed to do there. If we go back to this spot, is actually maybe a quicker way to get to plugins. We go to this installed, there's a few that need updates. And so I'm going to just hit update. And so now all of these will be, installed and up to date. Now, because this is sort of the start thing, I don't know that we really need to restart it, but normally when you install or update plugins, you need to exit and restart. It usually offers that, but in this case, I'll just exit it and relaunch it. And then we will clone a Hello World repository. So from this start thing, we're going to click clone. And it's defaulting to, Git. We're going to put in a Git URL. That Git URL is to GitHub. And, we'll have a link, but it's, github.com/gillum/prog8 hello. And it's picking the local directory, which it defaults to IDEA projects for IntelliJ IDEA. And then it uses the name of the repo as the directory. So all that default is fine. So we just need to add this URL and hit clone. Then it says, okay, cloning repository. And then once it's cloned, it's going to try to open it. And so here it says, hey, do you want to trust and open this project? There could be some malicious code in there, whatever. And it says Microsoft Defender should have an exclusions list set because it will scan files constantly and cause some performance issues, but you may also get a warning when you try to make this Defender change. So I would just uncheck this for the moment. In this case, I'm going to hit trust because it's my project and it's very simple. But we now are bringing up IntelliJ, and on first launch, it does, it's doing some more repo related things. It does some indexing and some other things going on. So it maybe is a little bit slow on the first launch. But what we want to find is the name of the directory in order to put this syntax highlighting file in there, okay? And just as a reminder, we go back to the, if we go back to the original Prog8 GitHub, which I did close, but we'll bring us up again, and we go to syntax files, and we go into JetBrains IDEs. It is saying it's on Windows, it's in user profile, which is your home directory, a directory called app data roaming JetBrains. Then this will be the name of the tool, which in this case is like IDEA C 2025. And then this directory called file types. And that's what we want to create to put this in there. So here's the repo. It's bringing up my README by default. I'll show you in the source, we have a main.p8, which I'll talk about, but I'll just bring that up real quick to show, it's not being syntax highlighted. So in this user interface, this 4 stack over here brings up the main menu. A lot of this stuff is available here via these different buttons, but to get kind of the typical Windows menu, you click this, and we'll go over to help. Click that to bring down the menu, and then this is maybe not super obvious, but under diagnostic tools, pops out, and there's special files and folders. So again, that's help, diagnostics, tools, special files and folders. If you click on that, it brings up all these different directories related to where things are stored. The one we're interested in is the second one down called the config directory, and that is, you know, app data, roaming, JetBrains, etc. As it was shown on that GitHub repo. This is the one we're looking for. So all we have to do right here is just double click on this directory for that name, and it's going to launch it automatically for us. The key though is once you're in here, there is no file types directory, right? So if we go back to the README on the GitHub compiler, it needs to be in a file types directory. So, you know, copy Prog8 XML to your whatever file type. So, okay, let's create it. Just basically hit new folder. I copied that earlier, so it's in my clipboard. Hit enter. I'll just open that up. And then in this other window, I will drag this over. See, it says move. I'll hold the control key down, let go, and it made a copy of it. So now JetBrains has this in this directory. I'm going to go ahead and close this and launch it again so that it'll pick up that change. And then it should be recognizing our Prog8 code. Okay. There's a little bit of something that goes on when it first launches because you see it has the README is here, but it actually hasn't rendered it yet. But while it's thinking about that, we'll just go back down to this main.p8 and then I'll double click on it. It says, oh, hey, Microsoft Defender may affect the performance. So maybe that's what's happening is it's scanning. I'll click this exclude, which is what I normally do. And we'll just see if we get an error or not. But now when we look here, you'll see that in this main.p8, we have, you know, colorful text, syntax highlighted, and, you know, maybe a little bit more interesting. So this is a hello world example. I will talk about, oh, finally we got to the change about the about the Microsoft Defender. So what this elevator.exe is, it's going to change so that Defender doesn't try to scan every file as it gets created underneath IntelliJ IDEA, because every time it's doing that, it's causing, you know, a bit of a performance problem for the compiler because it's writing out some code, it's doing some intermediary files, whatever, and every time Defender is halting the compiler or the IDE while it scans the file, and so it just tells you to, you know, it asks to exclude them. Okay, so now here we have this, and there's a couple more, or at least one more setup thing that I need to do related to make files before we talk maybe about this Hello World application. But you can see here as we have this make file. And IntelliJ IDEA here has a whole project management, like very advanced, you know, system. Java uses various kinds of make infrastructure. One of them is Gradle. And so make files are kind of not what it would normally deal with. And that's why we installed that makefile language plugin earlier. And we just need to make one change under the settings. And so again, we go to this quad stack over here to get the normal menu down. We'll go down to settings. And then under build, execution, and deployment, we're going to expand that. Build tools, we're going to expand that. And you'll notice here it says make, which wasn't there earlier. And if we look, it's kind of a Unix user bin make we need here on Windows. So we're going to click here to bring up the file browser. And we want to get the GNU make. So one option would be just type make in there, but because it's in the path, but it's better to just go to this PC, C drive, program files, X86 again, go into GNU Win32, bin, find make, and then hit open. And so it'll just put the full path to make in there. And then you can hit apply if you want to make some more changes, but we'll just say, okay, this is also just so you know is where you could change if you wanted a different, like it defaults to dark mode. You can go to light mode. You can do solarized light or solarized dark. But so now we have make configured, so it knows how to find the make executable. We have a make file. We also have this M over here, which is a little tool button for make. And so we can click that and it'll show make file, which is, this make file, and it's parsing it. And if we expand it, it'll show us the available targets or build targets in here. So all is kind of the default to build it, which we'll click that, and then we'll click this run target up here. And that is going to open a terminal, and then it's going to run the make all command essentially in the terminal. And if we scroll this back, we can see that it's calling the GNU make. It's telling it what make file to use, what directory to be in, and the target, which is all, which then results in the Prog8 compiler running. It compiles the source code here of source \main. Then it calls the 64 task assembler, which goes through, completes, and then it completed successfully. So we've successfully compiled this thing, and now we want to run it. Well, there's actually this emu target or emulation target, and if we use that instead, that actually will call make all, and then it'll make a D64 disk, and then it'll launch Vice. Okay, so we're going to click emu, and then we're going to click the play button again, and in this case, we can see it's dumping a bunch of Vice information, basically, and then boom, hello world is being printed, on the C64 in the emulator. Now, if we want to just look in here at device 8, which is the D64 that we created, there's a file on there called hello, and that was just loaded and injected as part of launching Vice. We can click this little dash here. We'll hide the terminal. We can actually click this M if we want to hide make. But you can see there's some other targets like clean if you had some kind of problem, where you were not sure if it was compiling it cleanly. You could just do make clean. It will remove everything in the build directory. But we can hide that, and if you'll notice up here at the top, it's given us make target list or ones that we've used, I guess I should say, not the full list, and then the ability to hit play. So what we might want to do is go over here and try the clean target, which is going to just okay, it deleted all the stuff in the build directory. And now that we've used that target up here at the top, that's the most recently used one, and it'll be selected. But if we click this drop down, we can just pick emu. So now, while we're working on things, we can make different changes, whatever. And when we're ready to run it, if you notice while I'm pointing here, it says run emu, and then it's got kind of grayed out. It says Shift F10. So while I'm in here working, I can do whatever, save it or not save it. It actually will handle that for you too. But I'm ready to try to compile it and run it. I just hit Shift F10. Because I did a clean earlier, it's now building it, and then it's going to launch the Vice emulator, and then it's injecting the executable. And so basically we can easily, jump from in the editor to running the program just like that. So now just a quick overview here about the Hello World itself. And we get it more in depth later in the series, but this just in the hello world, first thing we need to do is we need to import this text IO, and as the name implies, that's just text input and output on whatever platform you're on. Because Prog8 is portable, this text IO on a C64, uses, say, the kernel print. On a Commander X16, it might also, because it's based on the Commodore kernel. But on a Phoenix or something else, like an Atari, it does a completely different function, but it, is how you print to the screen. And so this essentially abstracts that into a nice, printing library. These are directives, which in this case is importing a module or a library. This directive 0 page is saying that I want you to preserve or be safe for use with BASIC. So don't overwrite or use any 0 page that BASIC needs in order to exit cleanly back to BASIC. If you use the default or full or kernel safe or different ones, then when if your program exits, it will reset the machine. If you're making a game or something, you're not going to exit. But if you're making like a text editor, well, every time you save the file and exit the editor, you don't necessarily want the machine to reboot or reset. And so in this case, like BASIC safe says, don't touch any 0 page that BASIC or the kernel needs. So that's what that directive is. And there's a few, a bunch of other directives we won't get into. But in a Prog8 program, you have blocks, and then you have subroutines. Well, we have module files, blocks, and subroutines. Text IO is a file, a module, and then within there will be blocks. But in your main program, you must have the main block, because that's kind of like the entry point. So you have main. It uses curly braces, kind of like C, to enclose these blocks. Then you must have a start subroutine. So that's, again, the entry point. And that's pretty much it. So in here, we imported text IO, and inside of text IO, there's actually a TXT block, not a text IO block. And so then I'm calling these functions from text IO as just block name, which is TXT dot, and then the subroutine, which in this case is lowercase. All that's doing is, putting the C64 into lowercase mode. And then I'm just doing text print, which is printing in mixed case, which is why I wanted lowercase mode. And then you can actually do this \n to have it do a line feed. You can also, there's, a bunch of subroutines, but txt.nl or new line is the same as, the \n. And so, we can do it that way as well, for an example. And, you're like, oh, okay, let me recompile this. Well, it's going to look pretty much exactly the same. Hello world. And, still has that new line or that blank thing before ready. Now, because this is, integrated development environment and it's calling make, you might say, okay, but if there's an error, what happens? Well, let's just put a hash, and I won't save it. I'm just going to hit Shift F10. And so you'll notice, it found this error, and it automatically saves it and then calls the compiler when you hit the compile command, or Shift F10 in this case, or run emu by clicking the play button there. Make runs the compiler. The compiler attempts to compile in this case, and it says, hey, there's a parse error on line 11, starting at character 34, and I having trouble recognizing this hash token. And so that's because that's not valid, right? So it's an error. So if I delete that again, and then I hit Shift F10, well, then the compile succeeds, and then it moves on to create the disk and launch the emulator. Well, you notice it didn't try to launch the emulator when we had the failed compile, and that's just because, Make's handling those dependencies. Like, the emulator depends on the main program having compiled successfully. And so, I guess in a nutshell, that is going from a very vanilla Windows installation to running a full, Prog8 tool chain. I guess one thing I should mention is, IntelliJ is designed for Java and has lots of debugging capabilities built in for Java, but it doesn't have debugging capabilities built in for a Commodore 64 in an emulator, right? So, you can't use its debugging capabilities that you might use if you were developing in Java. But with Vice, you can, of course, use Vice's built-in machine language monitor just with, activate monitor, right? And whoops, and you can do your normal, like whatever, look at memory, and exit. But that, debug capability is obviously not something that you're going to have anyway if you're cross-developing like this with a, I don't know of any platform, maybe PRG Studio or something for 6502 has a source level debugger, but I'm not really aware of any. Anyway, that is how to get to, developing in Prog8, getting to Hello World, and doing it on Windows.
How about so we've learned how to set up our compiler and all of our supporting utilities to be able to do this. Did a little bit of previewing of some of the programs that you can create with Prog8, and the targets that you can go after, whether it be a 64, an X16 PET, VIC-20, a lot of custom targets, right? But give us a little teaser for everybody to what do you envision the next episode? Obviously, we're going to get into actual Prog8, I guess.
Well, I think, there's going beyond just getting it installed and say hello world. Then we could do, some simple things like input and output. So like writing a small program to, read something from the keyboard and write something out, do something with it and write it back. Kind of the classic, like, what is your name? Andrew, and then hello, Andrew. I think just getting, into the next thing and doing it in a modular way, we can demonstrate that the same source code would compile on the Commodore 64 and, or for the Commodore 64 and for the Commander X16. So I think, the next step would be to just move into like learning about some variables, learning about some more print, things, how to print. We showed how to print a string, but how about printing numbers? I think it's like, what's your name? How old are you? And, print that out kind of thing, whatever. Yeah. But that's kind of the next step, I think, is just to go,
okay. Write down the list. Yeah.
Yeah. Just a simple little tool.
Yeah. So for those of you that are watching this one, come back to the next episode, where we'll get into some of the language features and dive deeper into Prog8. We're planning on making a series out of this, so this is just the first of many, hopefully. Other than that, also we'll have links down below for joining the Prog8 community. More information about that and the Prog8 users group that we are currently starting. So we want to get more people learning Prog8 and using. Thank you, Andrew and Brett. Thank you for your questions, and we will see y'all in the next episode.